Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the second installment of Survivors and Parents of Murdered Children, the podcast. My name is Ray, and I am your host. I'm also here to serve a trigger warning to anybody listening that this show deals with murder and the details of it, and recordings made live after a Parents of Murdered Children support meeting that happens every other Wednesday out here in Orange County. And the details of the murder, the emotions are all discussed openly without a censor. So let that be your trigger warning as a plug for the support group, GOCPOMC.org. That's Greater Orange County Parents of Murdered Children.org, where you can go on the website and see information about the group and when they meet and how to contact and possibly schedule your first meeting. Anywho, this past meeting was no different, and I heard stories that were worse than the last one. We had the opportunity to speak to Eva, and she'll share the details of her daughter's tragic murder that happened subsequent to a drive-by in the city of Santa Ana. And we will speak to Raquel, and Raquel was on the premiere episode with her discussing her experiences up until that point. And on this episode, she discusses experiencing court justice, which was just the day prior. And several members of the POMC group had attended with her while she was able to read her victim impact statement to the evil devil who decided to murder her niece. So without any further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so this is the second episode of the Survivors and Parents of Murdered Children. And I had a couple topics to ask the both of you. I have Eva here, and I have Raquel. She's our returning guest from our first show. And I'll ask those questions. And then from then on, I'd like to Raquel to give us an update on what she's experienced as recently as yesterday. And then Eva, you give us whatever you'd like. Okay. So I think it's interesting how we close the meeting. So the beginning of our meeting and the end of our meeting always gets me the worst.
Right.
And I think that some of those things we need to experience together. Because I just heard something about your relationship with your daughter that I had no idea. That just impacted me so much that I was, over there losing it. So I think those things are important because we are kind of locked into this chamber of suffering, right?
Right.
So it's important to be able to relate with someone and say, oh man, Eva thought exactly like I did. And she had a very similar relationship that I did with my son. Like I said, my last text message with my son was horrible. I mean, he told me I wasn't his father, and I wasn't there when he was born. So when you said what you said, I thought, man, that's so parallel. And it was not 5 days before, but it was like 2 months before, So one of the things I wanted to talk about on this second podcast is why I do this. So I do this because it seems important to me to share my experiences with others. And as I said last week, it's a very selfish reason because I feel like I'm helping others. I feel like you have something that you do, Eva. Raquel, you have something you do. Deb's standing over there, and she's the chapter leader. And she does something all the time. Mm-hmm. You see, everybody does something, right? So this is my something. I can reach out to other people in this way and post it on YouTube, and anybody can hear it whenever they want. So, and I think visiting the POMC and joining a group like that is very important because, like I said, you get to relate with others. And like we just talked briefly, you bring up murder with your own family sometimes, and the conversation is over.
Yeah, right.
By comparison, someone dies by natural causes, and, they'll talk about that person all the time and great memories and things like that. So there's the stark contrast of the two different types of death that are so polar opposite to even deal with. So that's why I do this show. Let me grab my notes here. Well,
No, those notes are hiding.
those notes are hiding from me. But that's the gist of it, right? And that's why we do it. So at this point, I'd like to turn over the conversation to Raquel. You had some court justice yesterday.
Yes, so
And-
we were able to give our impact statement.
Okay.
The judge opened up with ensuring that we understood what our impact, what our conversation is going to be to the court, and make sure that we addressed it to him. I'll say personally, you know, the way he started to speak seemed like it was like, I have to let you. That's the way it felt. Because, and I'll say his name, because Anthony on January 23rd had given his no contest to 15 to life charge, and he said yes, that he used a gun, so he got 4 years, and then he agreed to no back time. So court filing, it was done on that day. We had the sentencing in March because we needed to make sure all the family was here. Charlene's mom was here, and her sister and her nieces. So we were able to go up and make our statements. My mom made her statements, and we all did. And it was very difficult. It was very emotional. I mean, now I can remember it, but at the time there was so much going on that I don't even remember part of what I was saying. I don't know if it was clear enough. I mean, I was crying and everything, but he sat there and he heard each one of us. There were 7 of us that went up. And the judge expressed that he heard us. And it's not like anything could have been added to his sentence or anything, because he had already pled. He already agreed to the terms. But the judge heard us, and he later on told.
And those terms were what?
So he pled no contest to 15 to life for Charlene's murder, and 4 years to the gun enhancement, which was the small gun that they used, and then he agreed to no back time. So he had been in jail for 4 years, 3 months at the time. So none of that time counted. So on that day, you know, his 4 years, he's been in there. He was, you know, like I said, no back time. So his days start counting after the 23rd. So he has 48 days credit now on his.
So for a total, we're talking about 23 years.
23
right?
years.
And then he's a youthful offender in California,
Right.
so
Right.
we already talked about that today, how he could qualify for early parole.
Yes. Yeah.
Right, because apparently when you kill somebody under a certain age in California, you can get out just because of the age.
Yes,
Anybody
because
didn't know that?
what I've heard is that the mind isn't completely developed.
Right.
And they don't understand what they were doing. But as I stated in my statement, and I'll say it here, on August 3rd of 2020, between the hours of 11:05 and 11:25, Charlene came home, walked into her house, never to walk out again, and he shot her. He stood in the hallway, and he shot her in the face, which killed her. And then he stood over her, and he shot her, and the gun jammed. So he had to unjam the gun, and he fired into her face until there was no more bullets. And that's how he left it. And when he was asked if he understood his plea agreement, he had one question, which is that, you know, he felt he was starting over in time. And in my statement, I even addressed that and said, how dare you say that?
That,
Because,
yeah, how dare he say, well, I feel like I'm starting over.
right. And I stated to him that, you still live, you still breathe, you didn't leave, your face isn't disfigured, and your brain matter isn't all over the floor. I know it's hard to hear that, but that is what happened to my niece.
No, but so one of the reasons for me doing this show is, as graphic as that is and detailed as that is, I think people need to understand what murder actually means.
Right.
Is that it's never beautiful, it's never pretty, no one's ever respectful of the person they're murdering. It's done out of God knows what emotion
Right.
has lost control. There's nothing good about it. People need to understand, oh, well, Charlene was shot 6 times or a bunch of times in the face. So you hear murder charges and you don't get those details. You hear, oh, okay, well, it's a murder charge. But it's important to share these details, and I don't see a problem with it because I think people really need to grasp what murder means. There's a reason why it's the highest crime in the nation. You can't get any higher than murder. Like there's no other crime after murder, right? So
Yeah, he and I stated to him, your face is not disfigured, and that is the last image of my niece that I seen, because I did see the crime photos. Now, that doesn't linger in my head, but these photos are very traumatic and horrific. I don't want my mom to see it. She hasn't seen them. There's a lot of family members, I don't want them to see it because I can see those pictures, and I see my loving niece. I did not get to see her. I didn't get to say bye to her body. I didn't get to see her, and I was preparing myself to be able to. But during the time of COVID, there was a lot of things that needed to be done in order to be able to see the loved ones. But seeing the photos, all I wanted to do was just hold that photo next to me and just say bye. But now I have to, I think I'm able to probably start processing the grieving part of her, because every time we went to court or any kind of memory I had of her during these 4 years, I have anger. There was never a cherished memory I could have of her without crying and having anger. And I would be hostile, and I would be abrasive with family. When I knew court was coming up, I'd just become this bitch. I would just be this horrible, just mean person, because it was the stress.
it had the same effect on me.
It's just the stress.
Yeah.
So, and now when that happened on the 23rd of January, I went out to go eat with Sherry, which is Charlene's other aunt, and I heard a song that was playing in the restaurant that it was something that Charlene and I sang together and enjoyed together when she was in Oakland, and I cried, but I was able to enjoy it. I felt joy again. And I know, because Sherry told me, she's like, you did your job. You followed through, you got her justice, and now you can. And so now I've just been trying to go through the process of being able to grieve and trying to figure out what I'm going to do. And it's still hard every single day. It's never going to get better, because it's the not knowing the Charlene of who she would have been.
Yeah, we were talking about that. You're never going to know what she's going to be like at 30 or 40, or when she's a mom,
Right.
or her grandma. Like, there's so many things, So, thank you so much for sharing, Raquel. Thank you
You're
very
welcome.
much.
No, thank you. I mean, this helps. It helps. I love that I can come here. The group has helped me tremendously, and I just try and figure if I can help other people when it comes to domestic violence. I mean, I have come to understand a lot, and I've come to understand possibly, maybe why it was, she didn't say anything, which nothing we can do about it now. And that's the thing, is like, as I think I heard you guys saying, I mean, we relive moments And I relive a lot of moments of not stressing or pushing on her of being introduced to him. And that comes and flows every single day. So
Yeah, I have thoughts like that too. Like, and I say like I have thoughts like that bring me to day one, like that. So
right.
yeah, I completely understand that. So we also have Eva here. I'm going to introduce her as Eva, and she can feel free to share what she'd like about her situation, where she's at in the process.
As Ray said, my name is Eva. I'm here because my 18-year-old daughter, Victoria, was the unintended victim of a drive-by shooting on August 30th, 2019, and her case is unsolved. So my main focus these past 5.5 years have been, trying to get that justice that we were just talking about, going to court and facing those cowards. I think about it every second of every day.
The scum of the earth.
Right. And it's just like you said, it's never ending. It's an emotional roller coaster. It's just unbelievable that we're living this, situation. But yeah, like I said, I go out and I advocate. I do a lot of community outreach. That night, when it occurred, it was shortly before midnight, and Victoria and 2 boys were outside of their complex waiting for an Uber, and a rival gang drove by and shot at them. The boys she was with were the intended targets. My Victoria was hit, as was one of the other boys. He, I guess, was able to kind of run off and get away. And from my understanding, my Victoria, was immediately down, and she passed at the scene. One of those things that Ray mentioned earlier about our situation before their passing, it's really hard for me to deal with, other than, just the whole thought of her really being gone, but is the fact that I had just taken her car 5 days before. We had this big fight, and she wasn't being responsible, so I arranged it so I can meet at her aunt's house, my sister. I showed up unexpectedly, told her that we kind of blocked the car in her aunt's driveway, and told her, she wasn't taking the car, she was not being responsible. She was going to kill herself or someone else because she was just driving recklessly. And, she hated me. She told me very clearly, that she hated me. And she walked off, and I never saw her again. And 5 days later, she was killed. So it's something I live with every second of every day. And it's just even more sickening to think that these individuals are likely just roaming the streets, living their lives, doing their thing. They obviously haven't had an ounce of remorse or anything, because they haven't come forward.
Right.
And so they're getting to do their thing.
Or you can think maybe they've gone to jail for something else.
Yeah.
Maybe in jail they get,
Yeah, I get that a lot.
Maybe in jail they get Deb's back there.
And
because these guys aren't, productive members of society, let's say.
True.
Right. So I'm sure they're,
right.
in the system, in the loop, as they say.
Yeah. And definitely. And I've heard a lot.
The details I'm so sorry,
it's okay.
my dear, but the details of yours are so, because there's a picture of the vehicle, right?
Yes, there's a surveillance video.
Yeah, and then the crime, like you said, jokingly, you said, Yeah, nobody saw it at midnight.
Yeah, everybody
In a
was asleep.
residential neighborhood. Everyone's asleep at midnight.
And there's a lot of apartment complexes in that area.
All of them were asleep.
Every single
All
one,
of them.
apparently.
Right.
You know, no one feels the need to come forward and
Nobody was out for a walk.
no,
Nobody
a smoke, getting home from
nobody
work.
saw the car driving away at high speed.
Right, right, exactly.
Remarkable.
And it was a big maroon SUV.
SUV,
So
right.
it wasn't, you know, a little tiny sports car that just zoomed out of the, out of the neighborhood.
And those guys probably took off at such high speed that anybody would have noticed it.
Right.
Anybody.
You know, exactly. And it was in the downtown Santa Ana area. So that's a pretty busy area in itself. So,
Yeah,
I
sure
know
is.
there wasn't a lot of, I'm not sure if there was a lot of like surveillance from like street cameras or anything, but, it's just mind boggling how, as far as I know, nobody's come forward and said, yeah, I saw that vehicle, or I remember seeing, so many guys or people in this vehicle that looked suspicious or anything,
Where did the murder happen? Let's get intersections.
So this was actually, as I mentioned, in Santa Ana, I want to say about Main Street and First Street,
And the date again.
August 30th, 2019.
And the time.
It was shortly before midnight, and when I think dispatch received the first calls about shootings. From my understanding, there was actually a police officer about 2 blocks down, a police car. So they arrived very quickly and
I believe it.
rendered aid. And I believe that even more so because her time of passing was 12:12.
Okay.
So they were there quick. They were trying to save her. But anyways, the exact cross streets of the residential area are Pine Street and Hickory Street in Santa Ana. And, unbeknownst to me, that is a high gang crime area. My Victoria just happened to kind of start hanging with that wrong crowd, and I know she didn't realize, no matter how many times us parents tell them, even if you're not the intended victim, or even if you're not involved, something can happen to you indirectly. And again, I play those conversations over in my head because, as parents, we tell our kids that, you may not be doing something wrong, but someone else might be.
Right.
And, unfortunately, that is what happened to her.
But like I said last week, this is like a unique game ball to be given in life. I hate to say it that way, but you can either, like I said last week, you can let that game ball sink you, or you can lift it up and do something with it. And I've gone to a college with you, and I've spoken with a justice class with you. And like we were talking earlier, because I have a 4-year-old daughter, and then we were watching that the university video, and I'm sitting there in front of 30 students, and I'm like turning around going, wiping my eyes and crying because I had a 4-year-old daughter, and I'm looking at your pictures going, you never think that's an expiration date. You never think that that's your last record. That's going to be one of your last records of your loved one, so man, that got me really good. But I know you kind of picked up your game ball, and you've done what you can with it. So tell us a little bit, because you've been able to raise the reward to $100,000.
Yeah. So
And you have let's get the website. You have a website, don't you?
Yes, we have
Yeah.
justiceforvictoriabarrios.com. We also have social media platforms, at Justice for Victoria Barrios. And I just, actually during the pandemic, 2020 it came, I was off work and just decided I needed to do something. I knew nothing about social media. I didn't even have an Instagram or Facebook or anything.
I don't either.
Yeah, and
I have
so
no
that
idea
I
of
just
these
kind of
things.
got on there and started trying to figuring it out. But I think I've really come a long way with it. I have a really good following. As I mentioned, I do a lot of community outreach events, so I'm fortunate. I reach out to people and say, hey, I'd like to set up a booth at your event. I'm sharing my daughter's story. Being that I do most of them in Santa Ana, they are familiar with her story because there was media coverage, and again, my outreach. I actually had some billboards up for a good while, so it was seen, and I always like to think and hope that those responsible saw her billboards too, because that was my primary goal, was for them to maybe not turn down this specific street because they were going to see her big, beautiful face on a billboard or, things like that. But so that went on for a good while. But yeah, as you mentioned, the city of Santa Ana, or the Santa Ana Police Department, I should say, immediately placed an up to $50,000 reward because it was a homicide-related case, a gang homicide-related case. And I want to say last year, we connected with actually my city mayor, Mayor Valerie Amesquez. She's awesome, and our assemblyman. And they mentioned if I had heard of the Governor's Reward Program. And I actually had, but during the time, I remember years prior, they were kind of for more like cold cases, or long time, cases that hadn't been solved in a while. So my case, or Victoria's case, hadn't really met that criteria, so to speak. But then they reminded me, so they had me contact my detective, which, great relationship with them. So they submitted a request to possibly receive that, a reward from the governor, and we were granted that additional $50,000, which now was raising the reward to up to $100,000. And it is still mind-boggling that, no one's come forward. No one's come forward. I always say there's 100,000 reasons now. That's, life-changing. And I never wanted it to be about the money. I wanted people to come forward from their heart and truly want to, speak up and feel the need to come forward. But even then, I think it's maybe been a little over a year now that we've had that reward out. And
It's frustrating from our perspective because I'll never forget what Deb says, the streets always know.
Right, exactly.
So
I hear that
down
a
in the
lot.
back of your mind, you're going,
Yeah.
come
Why-
on,
why-
people.
yeah,
I
mean,
know
just
you know something. You live right there.
Right, exactly.
Your stairs come down right here.
Yep. Yeah,
You know?
exactly. So it is very, very.
You may not have seen the shooting, but you saw who ran.
Yeah,
You saw who drove away.
yeah.
They
definitely.
talk, right? They talk.
Right, the
So-
streets talk always, and it is, and that's one thing my detectives always tell me is, it's not a matter of if, but when, because those streets talk, those people talk, and at some point, somebody is gonna, for whatever reason, whether it's the money or not, the reward, they're gonna feel compelled to come forward, and unfortunately, it has been 5.5 years, but our fight for justice isn't gonna stop. So, I just wish they would do it sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I think we all do. I'd like to thank you both
Thank you.
for
Thank you.
speaking.
Thank you.
Raquel, Rochelle. Eva, you're always going to be Rochelle to me.
One thing I do want to mention
Anything you want.
is having Deborah and everyone, from the group here, going to court and being there. It's very helpful. My family got to meet the group that I go with, and the members gave a sounding ear to my brother and to the family and talked with them. And then the court advocate, Cecilia, I also want to thank, because although she didn't have a great or a good relationship with my sister-in-law, I mean, she was always extremely helpful, and she really helped my mom yesterday. She sat with her and helped her. And then the DA and the detective, Matthew Landreth, I mean, he was always constantly making sure that all the information that was needed for the case was there, and he was ready for trial. Oh, he was ready. And then also Moses Castillo was there, and the lawyer Samuel DeLuden, who helped with when Gascon was when he got voted in, and he helped us and a few other families. That's where we brought attention about what Gascon was about. They were there, which surprised me, and that was very, I was very touched by that as well. But coming here and being able to speak, and even though it's only one time out of a month, it helps.
Doesn't
It
it, though?
helps me all the time.
Right, and I agree. Obviously, I haven't been at your stage in my case or story yet, but I always think like I need to come here and as much love and support as you can have. Sometimes you just need to be around those that truly know what you
Right.
feel.
We
No
get it.
words, nothing needs to be said,
Never.
nothing, right?
Yeah.
And it's just, oh gosh, I can't even explain how important it is to just be able to have that, where you come and you're in a room where, unfortunately, this tragedy has brought us together.
Right.
But it is something.
Yeah.
It is.
It does, yeah.
No, words never have to be spoken, because I was at the event that was put on by the Orange County DA, Todd Spitzer. This was a couple of years ago. And there was this little old lady next to me, and she was crying. And I had no idea who she was. And I put my arm around her, and we both started crying. And it was Peaky's grandma, Donna. And ever since then, like, she's like a lifelong friend. Because she ended up marrying a Cuban guy, so I'm Cuban. So we like, you know,
that
and then Anna and I, you know, talk about Cuban stuff. So,
Yeah.
but we didn't speak any words, but I knew exactly what she was thinking, you know, in that very moment. And I put my arm around her, and that's what was needed. And that was amazing. It was one of the best experiences I've ever had.
Yeah, and I think at those events, especially, because
Yeah, with the bagpipes playing background. Oh my God,
gets
get
me
out of here
every
with the
time.
bagpipes.
I can't. Every time I lose it.
I cried like a baby.
How can you not? I mean, I know they get me every time, and it's just so beautiful. But I think it's just truly the fact that we know why we are there, and it's just, I think, personally, we not only know how we feel, but we know what everybody else is feeling
Yeah.
and what the families are feeling.
Yeah.
You know, whether
Yeah.
you're related or not, or, you know, it's just.
I mean, Roy and I were joking one time. We were like, "Hey, you know, let's break into the jail, you and I, and I'll help you.
I'm in.
I'm in.
Yeah.
Let's
I'm in.
let's go. Here, I'll give you my chip. You call that chip in whenever you want."
Right.
So, just a real quick plug for the GOCPOMC.org. That's for the Greater Orange County Parents of Murdered Children.org. That's the website that you can access if you want to get the contact information for the chapter leader, and you can get a schedule of the meetings. With that being said, okay, so we have the candlelight vigil, and what date is that? That's April 5th. Okay, and that's when we have some dedications that are done. We have a couple guest speakers. It's usually a pretty good turnout of a lot of what I end up calling family, because, you know, you're, like I said, you're standing across from them. You don't know them, but you definitely have this weird strand that connects everybody. You have all these strands out there, you know. So, yeah, everybody show up to the candlelight vigil. Listen to the show, please. Kind of weird for me to be asking for that now, but it'd be great if someone got the inspiration to come to a POMC meeting just from listening to a show.
Yeah, to know we're
And
here.
going, hey, you know, man, that person has the similar experiences. Maybe I should go share and see if I can empower someone else to pick up their ball and do something
go.
with it and go. So thank you so much. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for your
Thank
time.
you.
Till next
Thank
time.
you, Ray.